Welcome to I Don't Need an Acting Class with Milton Justice.
All right, I just let me give you some more before we get to the script. Let me give you just a few more general notes that I think are helpful for us, because I think it's important for us to really get in our minds clearly the nature of modern theater and what it's about. It's going to take us a while to get all this. Years, but the important thing is that I find it helpful to focus my thinking at least someplace specifically that I say, okay, as an example, the reason I study Strindberg and the reason I'm so obsessed with Strindberg is because with Ibsen, Strindberg, and Chekov, we had the beginning of realism, which is the form of theater that has lasted the longest. That, to me, is really important. Ibsen made people think for the first time. And the reason Ibsen made people think for the first time is because he was bringing up issues that are not solvable. So, I mean, that's really important to know. Unlike the totally and completely relaxing entity of action movies that I like to watch, because it's always clear who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. In realism, there are no good guys and there are no bad guys. And look, it's important for us to know because these characters come out of this. There is no longer the good wife and the bad mistress. In other words, it's important to understand how complex human beings are. In other words, you can't just leap to a fast decision. So you have to really say, I need to explore. I need to figure out certain things. You have to really know more. And you say, oh, that's not enough information because I need to know who this human being is. So that was really an important thing. It is important for us to just have in our back of our minds that human beings are complicated. That's why these plays are exhausting to do. Ibsen had people trapped by society. Strindberg added that people are trapped by themselves. They are, the modern drama starts with the self-trap from which you cannot emerge. I mean, I think people who go into therapy realize that if you're fucked up, you're never going to be unfucked up. You're just going to learn how to deal with it more. You know, if you go into therapy because of father issues, you're never going to settle your father issues. You may learn how to deal with them better. But it's like, that's how difficult it is. You know, you have to really understand that being a human being is really, really difficult. But the self-trap is really an interesting thing to just add to the thing that we get into a circumstance and we can't get out of it. God, my note is it's an inner psychological trap. I don't want to go there, but just, you know, but that's well, look, I have some fun notes that I'm because what we know in this scene and what we recognize is that this is a play, this is a scene, this is about the relationship between a man and wife. This is a relationship between men and women. And we have to know that's huge. The these are some notes that I had. In Victorian England, women were told that they were not supposed to enjoy sex. And men were encouraged to visit prostitutes rather than defile their own wives. To discourage promiscuity, birth control and abortion were outlawed in many countries, including the United States, and women were often forced to rely on illegal abortions to control family size. Not until the early 20th century did anyone dare suggest that sex should be accepted and even embraced as healthy or something to be enjoyed by both men and women. I mean, do you see what I'm talking about here? This is a huge issue. In 1900, Freud published The Interpretation of Dreams. The unconscious mind was a powerful force, he proclaimed, and sexual drive was the most powerful of all determinants of a person's psychology. Well, perhaps he over-responded, but at least that's what he was writing about. Sexual urges required gratification, Freud wrote. Abstinence was both unnatural and potentially harmful. In Europe, critics complained that Freud was making too much of sexuality and the good doctor came to be despised. But upon arriving in America, he found a welcome, influential audience. But, I mean, this is the thing to understand. Stella used to talk about something that I liked. It was the idea of blood memory. And she would talk about how there is this blood memory that people have. Men have a blood memory. It's just like in you, that you have to be in charge, that you have to take care of. Women have a blood memory that it's a different kind of taking care of. They have to and in other words, it's just this thing. And it's a weird part of thinking in terms of acting that there's a blood memory. But this all comes from all of this. People feel guilty about sex. People feel guilty about enjoying sex. And that's just because, for reasons that make no sense at all, it was decided years ago there was something wrong with it. It's like not the sort of thing that people say in dinner conversation, which is, oh my God, I love fucking. I mean, it's like, do you know what I mean? People don't say that. People don't sit at dinner and say, oh my God, you want to know what's hot? Being naked with my lover. I mean, it's like nobody says that. But why? And it's just because this is all part of it. This is all part of conditioning. This is all part of something that we bring to the table. And when we're doing a play that's about the relationship between men and women, we are in this very, very difficult territory. And that's the reason we have to really understand about it. My other note is the establishment of the home has been the rule for marriage. You all will know this. I mean, my God, if you think about the Catholic Church forever and forever and forever, it's like the only reason to have sex was to have children. That was it. That was the only reason to have sex. I mean, do you see how, and so you wonder why they're fucked up Catholics. It's because this is what they grew up thinking. So all of this is something that's important to understand that we bring to the table when we're doing these kind of plays. When we're doing plays about the relationship between men and women, it is really useful for us to understand the baggage that comes with this theme. All right, what else do I have? I didn't send you the first scene in the play, Pascal, but in the first scene in this thing, Paul is stoned on the beach in, where were they? Bali. Stoned on the beach in Bali when he meets Susan. And they're like two sort of stoners. Now, here's the thing that's important to know about that. What is important to know about that is the period that this play takes place in and what happened. This will always be true. Even if the play takes place in 2024, that the period that we're in gives us a key to the characters. And what are the issues? The issues are, I'm sure there's a really long list of issues, but among the issues are, what is the relationship to morality? What is the relationship to ethics? What is the relationship? If you're doing a play that takes place in 2024, I mean, my God, by 2024, does anybody really care that Donald Trump gave hush money to a porn star? I mean, in the early 1960s, John Kennedy was having an affair with Marilyn Monroe. Nobody knew about it. By the 90s, Bill Clinton was getting a blowjob in the Oval Office. And it's like, we were shocked, but now if somebody said, somebody gave somebody a blowjob in the Oval Office, they go, oh, yeah, what else? I mean, do you see what I mean? You have to understand certain things that begin to exist. I don't even know what we believe in anymore. I mean, it's sort of like, it's always fun to think what could actually cause a scandal. Okay, so where did that come from? So the opening scene of this play, well, the whole play takes place in the 70s, but the opening scene of this play is, by the 1970s we had lost a war. There'd been Watergate. Now, Watergate, for an American play, isn't an important sort of thing because the President of the United States gave hush money. Nobody would ever believe that was possible. I mean, it's like, it's the President of the United States. He wouldn't do something like that. And it's like he wanted to be president so badly that he allowed anything to happen. So that becomes part of it. But do you see how that breaks things down? As soon as the President of the United States is thrown out of office because of his illegal dealings, now we're open for anything. So it begins to affect, I'll tell you something, I think it begins to affect you because you're kind of pulled between this blood memory of something and the way that you're living in the world at the moment. The world is falling apart, so people turn more to their own devices. And by that, I mean people began to be more interested in themselves. Younger people had no interest in politics or the world around them. And this, of course, was the beginning of the me generation. Even the music, I remember the music. To me, there is nothing better than disco. But there was an evolution of disco, they were lyrics with no social purpose at all. When you consider that 10 years before, Peter, Paul, and Mary were singing, if I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer out freedom, I'd hammer out this. That we were singing, we shall overcome. We were, in other words, there was all of this that's going on. I mean, my God, nothing is better than the French national anthem. I mean, there was a time when all of that was important, and then all of a sudden one day we had got to disco. I will survive, I will, yeah, you know, it changed. The world changed during that period. I'm convinced, as you know, I've said this before, that the reason acting is so boring is because of your music. There are no dynamics. Periodically you have somebody, I can't get through Taylor Swift. I don't understand it. I can't get through more than, I tried to get through. I mean, Jonathan sends me Judy Garland singing a song, and it's like the soul of the woman absolutely kills you. Taylor Swift to me is like, I don't know, what you listen to in the background as fill when you're cooking. The music reflects the period that we're in as well. But the thing that I think that is really important is that change is difficult. And there is a change, and we're not comfortable with this change, no matter who we are. If you think about it on a simple level, one of my Yale students called me when I was in Seoul. I was in Korea, and he said, can we meet? And so this is before Zoom. I have no idea what we were, Skype, I think. And so he said, he just graduated from Yale. And he said, I need an assignment. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, I'm freaking out. I need an assignment. So, of course, he went through 12 years of school, then 4 years of college. And like all of a sudden, now he's out in the world and he needs an assignment. Because there's a change. You go from somebody telling you what to do all the time. You know what you're doing. I have a 9 o'clock class. I have a 10 o'clock class. You know what you're doing. And then all of a sudden one day, you no longer have structure. That kind of change is really difficult. Well, imagine now a change in the mentality of society. All of a sudden, women could work. And women decided to abandon their roles as housewives and look for paying jobs. That's huge. It's both huge and it's uncomfortable for men. I mean, you can understand why suddenly, the divorce rate, skyrocketed in the last 50 years. Morally, we knew it was right. Ethically, we knew it was right. And you say to yourself, well, of course women should be able to work. Well, of course women should be paid as much as men. Well, of course, blah, 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 all of that. But the reality of it is that this change is difficult. Even in my house, on the rare occasions Teo's home, he cooks. I do the dishes. I'm the perfect wife. But it's like suddenly you don't have to do this anymore. And included in this, and certainly in this play, is Susan doesn't have to have a child. That was not a question before. A huge, is this making sense? A huge responsibility came. When you don't know exactly where you belong, then you have to take responsibility for yourself. When you, as a woman, don't know that what you have to be as a wife and mother, then suddenly you have to make those decisions. And that's difficult. I think what we forget is that this is not so easy on Susan. It's the 1970s. It's the 1970s, and it's new. And clearly in the first scene, we get a hint of Paul who says, I have to get back because I have a job. But, they're both a couple of people who are most interested in getting stoned on the beach in Bali. And she's thinking, well, we could just keep traveling. Does that make sense that that's a particular mentality? That's a particular mentality that's not my mentality, I have to say. I was having a bad day the other day, and then Caleb came over so I could put him on tape for an audition as a go-go boy. And I felt much better. But I felt much better because I thought, oh, good, I'm being creative. I mean, it's like if I don't do something creative every day, I get depressed. With Susan, as we can see from this scene, the idea that she is working, it is new. My guess is her mother didn't work. Her mother didn't have a career. And it's new.
And also that freedom isn't this wonderful thing only, that freedom has a burden to it as well. I mean, I even think when I suddenly have any time of vacation, it sounds good at first, and then when I have it, it's like, what the fuck do? I don't know what to do with myself.
I know. All right. So I would say, look, among the many things that it's very good for us to look at, very good for us to understand, is that we must figure out what makes a marriage. I mean, we have to ask these questions. And the question is, my question that I put in my notes today was, what besides cohabitation makes a marriage? I mean, and it also tells you why they don't work. I keep finding articles. I don't know who does these articles, but they clearly do them so I can get them. 8 signs to call it quits on a relationship. You're only staying because of religion. Your needs aren't being met. Huge. Huge. If you're not being satisfied emotionally, sexually, or intellectually, it's probably time to move on. Well, that's pretty huge. Ending a relationship is hard, but it's sometimes the only correct thing to do. If you and your partner aren't connecting on the most fundamental levels, it will be best for both of you to move on. I don't know who wrote this article, but it's fabulous. I should probably send it to all of you. You've lost respect for your partner. It can be disheartening if you're still motivated to achieve and your partner has become lazy. You might also lose respect for your partner if they've made promises that they clearly won't or can't fulfill. You should break off the relationship before it becomes tiring for both of you. Your partner's behavior is difficult or dangerous. You no longer feel sexually attracted. You have a hard time forgiving. You no longer have fun together. Long-term goals no longer match. Well, my God, I think that covers all of it. I mean, they write articles like this for the New York Times because that's what the New York Times does. You know, you take it with a grain of salt or you look at it and you sort of think, I mean, it's obviously more complicated than that.
Did it come with a number for an attorney at the bottom? Or just asking for a friend?
No. It's helpful for me to have all of this information before I get to the text. Does that make sense? Because it's kind of like I know what cloud I'm under. I know what world I'm in. By having all of this, I know what world I'm in. I know the time frame. I know the mentality. I know what's going on in the world a little bit. I can fit in much more. The fact that I know that the divorce rate is on the rise, I can ask myself why. What is going on? What is happening with people? Also, keep in mind these are real people. These are not people like us. I sort of distinguish the difference between real people and people like us because, we're strange. I mean, I mentioned Freud earlier, but keep in mind, Freud analyzed everyone but the artist. He would not get near the artist. There was no way to explain it. There was no way to explain why someone gets obsessed because they can't figure out what a scene is about in a play as an actor. There's no way to explain that. And there is a way to explain why relationships don't work. There are 8 reasons. And that's the reason it's just important to understand, although Susan is a photographer and Paul is a film editor, they're more like real people with real people's problems. For years and years and years and years and years, you could never, ever, ever sell a TV series based on an actor. You'd go in and you'd pitch it, and they'd say, "Oh, please, nobody's interested in an actor." Nobody would do. It was only not until Glee, I think, because then they could sing songs, and it was about a high school. But it's like nobody cares about an actor's problems.
I Don't Need an Acting Class is created and hosted by Milton Justice, produced by me, Walker Vreeland, director of online media is Evan Solers, and music is by Shagoy. I Don't Need an Acting Class is brought to you by weaudition.com, where you can sign up to be a virtual reader for auditions. You can also find a reader for a rehearsal or self-tape. It is the #1 resource for that purpose. And if you use the code ACTINGCLASS, you get 25% off, which makes it something like $10 a month. So check that out, weaudition.com. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you back here next time.